Welcome to mediamelanie TV. Today I'm back to talk about It Welcome to Derry Episode 2. First of all, HBO is streaming this episode early, which is just pure brilliance because obviously Halloween, and what spookier of a show could we possibly ask for on this day? This episode nailed pretty much everything from top to bottom, and at least for me, I felt it was even stronger than episode 1. The horror elements, the gruesomeness, just starting right at the top. The opening sequence, that song, is presenting this image of the idyllic 60s, but it also feels like this dark noir nightmare montage. The song is called Smile and a Ribbon by Patience and Prudence. I've never heard this song before, but as soon as it came on, I just think they are not only leaning into all the horror of it all, but establishing this very true to life feeling that we are in fact in the 60s, in 1962 Derry, Maine, from start to finish. And speaking of the finish, the whole Boogeyman song to close it out after Dick Halloran's like, we're getting close, even the score, it establishes this sense of dread and fear and tension all the way throughout. It is just done so well. This sense of horror, dread, and fear feels incredibly earned, and it is almost constant throughout. There are not a lot of happy things happening here, I guess, aside from some of the kids coming together, which is great because we just lost a few of the kids in the whole movie theater situation. However, the bodies were not recovered, so I suppose there's still a chance they could be out there, but just given all of the blood loss, I would suspect that, if anything, perhaps they are below the sewers floating or somewhere with Pennywise, and maybe we'll get to see them later on, but by all accounts, it doesn't seem like they are going to have much of a part here in the main cast. Something I also appreciated, in my last review, I talked a little bit about how I loved all of the kids' content, but wasn't quite as sold on the adult stuff and the military. However, they've done a great job starting to really connect the dots between the adults and the kids, but also give us more peeks into what exactly is happening on the military base. I don't think I cared much about it at first, but now that we're getting more of Dick Halloran, which was another thing I said in my first review, I want to know more about Dick Halloran. How is he contributing to this mystery? What exactly is buried under Derry? What is Project Precept? I have so many questions, but before I get more into my review of It Welcome to Derry Episode 2, please go ahead, hit that like button, and subscribe if you haven't already, because I've been working super hard to become a full-time TV content creator. So just a lot of gratitude for everybody who tunes in with me, but also I just finished up covering Only Murders in the Building Season 5. I'm also doing weekly reviews on the Talamasca, which is in the Anne Rice universe and is on AMC and AMC Plus. Coming November 7th, for all my teen drama fans out there, Maxton Hall on Prime Video. And looking ahead to December, Fallout. And I mean, who knows, whatever else might cross my path in between now and then, we will see. But you got to be subscribed so you don't miss a thing. All right, back into the review. First, I'm going to get into the highs, and honestly, most of this video is going to be about highs, but just starting from a broader perspective of the visual storytelling here. The set pieces obviously are very strong, but the way the camera work is helping to create this sense of things might appear perfect on the surface, but they most definitely are not underneath. There's a shot at one point down into the concrete, and it almost wants to go down underground into the sewers, but it doesn't. Instead, it transitions into this sweeping overhead shot of the town as a whole, and they're actually telling us a lot right there without saying anything, and that is something I always appreciate. Not only that, but even when Charlotte came to town and she's walking in downtown doing some errands, there was this slight moment when it looked like it was shot from down the alley towards her as if somebody was watching her. And I've also just got to say, I love Charlotte. From the second she got out of the car, there is just something about this Hanlon family, the chemistry between Charlotte, Leroy, and their son Will. I was very excited to meet them, and it's amazing to me how they can just feel like this complete family unit that we know, that we already care about just in this very short amount of time here in Derry. We're also starting to get just little hints of Pennywise. Did anybody notice when Margie was walking down the hallway in the school looking at her crush there? There was an orange reflection in her glasses, and I don't think that was an accident. It seemed to me very intentional, and it makes me wonder, is Margie going to either be the next victim, or is she going to become inhabited and victimize somebody next? It's kind of sad how she's trying so hard to fit in with the patty cakes, and by the way, like, who calls themselves the patty cakes, even if you're doing the dumb patty cake thing. Whatever, Patty. Not a big fan of school bullies in general, which has been one of my low points just because I don't like watching kids get bullied, whether it is just for being an outsider, whether it is Will coming to the school as a black kid, whatever it is, I do not love bullying. But getting that hint of Pennywise's eyes in those glasses, and then also in the monster that attacked Veronica, Monster Mom. This scene tore me apart almost as much as allegedly it tore her mother apart, which is something that you just, never want to hear as a person who gave birth. I was horrified here. I do think for me, this scene just hit so much harder than the car scene in the opening sequence. And that was the highlight of the episode for me back in episode 1. So for this show to keep delivering these horror beats and having them get even creepier is just masterful to me. And speaking of those creepy scenes, okay, the whole Veronica thing, yes, that was incredibly wild. Just the imagery and how Veronica felt trapped under her covers. At first, when it started happening, I'm thinking, oh my gosh, it's like they're surrounding her in a water sack, like when you give birth. And I actually wrote in my notes, oh, seems like we're getting more birth imagery here. Well, boy, did we get more birth imagery. And I think that is contributing to the fact that they're trying to have this metaphor come into play that Pennywise is going to be born again for this 27-year cycle. And even though we still haven't seen Pennywise, which is really probably the biggest low for me overall so far, the way that they are working up to that and building with all of these core birth scenes, when the birth of Pennywise or when his first appearance does come, I think it is going to be maybe the best part of the entire season. And for me, there's already been quite a few of those. And we're only on episode 2 out of 8. But let's talk about the fact that I may never see Pickles the same way again. And poor Lily. She was one of the big standouts that I mentioned in episode 1. I love this actress. I think she's bringing a lot to this role. She comes across as such an innocent child who unfortunately has also experienced some pretty major traumas. And then to experience the grocery store situation where the pickle jar comes alive. First, it's building up almost the same way that car episode did, right? It started out, he's getting into a car, seems like a totally normal family, and then things obviously went pretty haywire. And similar to this grocery store scene, she's entering the grocery store any other day, her mom's working a double shift, she's got a shopping list. Things start to get pretty crazy, but a slow build. And I just love that. The way the shelves started closing in on her, the way the other shoppers are cricking their necks and creepily following her like they're some sort of like ghost or zombie. And then the pickle jars. We obviously know her dad died. He worked at this jarring plant. But the fact that they put his face into the pickles and just how utterly creepy that was, it just got me. That's all I can really say. It just really got me. I thought the lampshade situation in episode 1 with those faces was pretty creepy, and it still was. I still don't think it's quite necessary, and again, gives more of the Ed Gein vibe than I think it does Stephen King. But here, her dad in the pickle jar talking to her, I mean, who even comes up with that? I just think props to Andy Muschietti for putting that out there. Literally, every time I look at Pickles now, this is what I'm going to think of. But it's also interesting to me with Lily's arc, the fact that we learned she was in Juniper Hill after the events of her dad's death. She ended up back there anyway, which she was trying to fully avoid by not turning on Ronnie's dad, Hank. Unfortunately, they did kind of trick her. She ended up throwing him under the bus, but she still ended up in Juniper Hill. And by the way, Juniper Hill was one of the things that was depicted in this opening, just brilliance. But it also makes me question, is this all happening just as part of Lily's story, or is the town of Derry propelling her and sort of planning for her to be in Juniper Hill? And what's going to happen in Juniper Hill? I do know it is something featured in the Stephen King verse, including It Chapter 2, and some other books. If I'm guessing, I'm thinking just the way the people were looking at her when she got out of the car and they were taking her into the place, I don't think things are going to go very well, and I think it is very intentional, and I do think the fear in this town is putting her in there more than her part in actually like looking crazy in the grocery store. So everything that's happening to her, I think, is very purposeful, very intentional, and I hope that she's able to get out of there. And I'm wondering, are her friends going to be able to get her out? Margie is not being a great friend right now, even though a lot of that probably stems from insecurity and trying to fit in. I hope she's not trapped there. Obviously, I mean, we have to see more of Lily, right? Is Ronnie going to go in after her? But Ronnie's not very happy with her either, because obviously she's part of the reason why her dad is now being blamed for the movie theater. When the police were talking about that at the very beginning, by the way, when they're like, oh, it's the film projectionist with the candlestick, I always like references to Clue. That was just kind of a subtle, humorous thing. But then those officers even shift back to, yeah, this is a complete tragedy, these poor families. And poor families indeed. We saw so many missing posters there in the police station as well. And we know that is part of this whole Pennywise, all of the missing people, all of the deaths, etc. And again, with the slow build to Pennywise, I'm not quite as mad about it as I was at first. Yeah, I want to see Bill Skarsgård. I want to see Pennywise. But the way they are really weaving everything together and building up to that reveal, I just cannot wait. I guess really the only lows here are, at least for me, some of this emotional helplessness that I feel for these poor characters, from the kids being bullied to where Lily is ending up. I hate to see people, perceived in a certain way by others when it's just not the fact. We know that Lily isn't crazy. It's just the way that her character is being framed right now. And to be framed as such after the loss of her dad. But let's talk more about Operation Precept. I will say, as soon as we got to see Dick Halloran, we established that he is very important to this mission, coming back into the base when it was on lockdown. And the gate guard just gave a phone call and they're like, oh, Dick Halloran? Yeah, Dick Halloran. Okay, yeah, let him in, no problem. He did get a little bit of admonishment when he was clearly hungover. And the person in charge was like, hey, where is this thing that we're looking for? And when I first saw archaeological dig, I mean, archaeology fascinates me in general. I'm thinking, what are they looking for? I assume it does have to do with the meteor that crashed down eventually. I assume it has to do with the fact that it is a cosmic presence, and whatever is buried there long ago, I don't think it was buried by a person. I think it did potentially arrive by meteor. I'm not sure if that is a thing from the book or not, but they did end up digging up this car, and they said, there's this one thing there and it's surrounded by all kinds of objects. So I assume the car is one of those objects. I also saw them examining what looked like baseball jerseys. I don't know what that has to do with anything. I imagine it is just another one of the objects that they found surrounding whatever it is they're looking for. And the way that they're tying it into the Cuban Missile Crisis and the timing of it all, the town is already afraid. I mean, this is a very scary era. It is the Cold War, the Cuban Missile Crisis. There's so many bigger events going on in the world, but also Derry is sort of becoming this microcosm of its own where it's got its own problems. And my other question is, okay, if they're able to locate whatever this thing is that they're looking for, if it is designed to be weaponized, I mean, essentially it seems like they're weaponizing fear. They're saying that they need Hanlon in order to face it. And I guess that has to do with what he's proven with what he did fighting in the Korean War. But is he going to end up being sacrificed for the greater good, for them to be able to somehow use this weapon of fear against the Soviets or whoever? How do you actually weaponize fear? What is this thing? How do you contain it? And what if you can't contain it? Obviously, we know Pennywise comes in these 27-year cycles. Is this going to kick off the events of now and then they bury it again up until Pennywise comes back? I am not sure, but I like how they are giving us more intrigue and mystery. Not only are we getting a very impactful horror story here, but to get a solid mystery on top of it, I was left thinking, oh my gosh, I want more. In a way, I almost wish this was a binge. And I don't often say that because I am more of a week-to-week watch type of girl. But I was ready for more. As soon as that ended and Dick Halloran's like, we're close. How close are you, Dick? Are we going to see this weapon in the next episode? And what does it look like? I mean, is it a meteor? Is it some throbbing orb or something? And like I said, how do you even contain this fear? Or is it just going to unleash on the whole town and there's going to be more of a mass catastrophe? We know something does happen at this Black Spot nightclub. Is this weapon tied into that, or is that just simply a racially motivated crime carried out by a human, not a dancing clown? Overall, though, I think this episode was a 10 out of 10. Okay, maybe a 9 out of 10, because I do think there's room for it to get even better once we do finally get to see Pennywise. mysteries moving into the next thing and questions. Are the kids actually dead in the movie theater? Phil and Teddy and the sister, or are they going to be uncovered somewhere? Are they underneath the sewers? Are the kids going to find them, or is the military going to find them? Another thing I had mentioned was I would rather see these kids taking on Pennywise and it. Not necessarily the military, but it does seem like that's obviously a big part of this operation that they're doing. I just think they don't quite realize yet how it all ties together with all of the disappearances and deaths. And then with Lily at Juniper Hill, is she going to get out? When is that going to be? It broke my heart seeing her mom driving there, but it seems as though Derry is actually the one who is steering her there, like it is her fate to be there, and it doesn't want her on the outside because she's one of the only people that actually saw what happened in the movie theater. Yeah, Ronnie was there, but she was basically just going by Lily's word. And like the police chief said, there's a fine line between being a victim and a perpetrator if you're walking out of there covered in your friend's blood. And also just poor Ronnie, who also just dealt with that whole situation, but now knows that her father is not guilty of it. And obviously there's going to be an element of Ronnie trying to fight for her dad. And her grandmother obviously is not happy. I can completely understand why. Even Charlotte, going back to another character here, because yeah, there are a lot of racist undertones. It's this era in this country. And even though they specifically say this is not the South, people are not getting away with things here. Obviously, you can't help that people still have racist feelings. I mean, it was just part of life at that time. Charlotte is not afraid to speak her mind. She was the only one who was trying to jump in with those boys beating each other. And by the way, the boys will be boys thing, get out of here. I've got a 13-year-old son and I never, ever would just be like, oh, just boys being boys. I will tell you, I had an incident once with a neighbor whose son punched my son in the face. Oh, just boys being boys. But you know what? He learned that from his dad, who also approached somebody in a Little League situation when he wasn't happy with his son not getting enough playtime. So I will say that boys will be boys is just the biggest joke of all time. And anybody who uses that, get out of here. I have so much respect for Charlotte. I understand why Leroy is asking her to back off. He doesn't want there to be a target on their family. And even his son Will is experiencing that at school. He's sitting on the floor by his locker eating lunch by himself. Unbelievable. Again, that just tears me up. And then at least, hey, the bright spot of it is, I guess, he made a friend. So that's a good thing. And I do think these instances and events are going to bring the new core friend group together, or this iteration of the Losers Club. And I'm really excited to see them come together, work together, and try to take this evil on. Altogether, though, this one completely landed for me from start to finish. Like I said, from that open, from the Boogeyman song at the end, to the score, to finally learning more about Dick Halloran, what the military is actually doing, and piquing my interest there because I was worried that it was not going to have enough substance to it for us to actually care. And it would just be one of those storylines. You're like, okay, when's it going to be over? Kind of like the Yellow Jackets adult timeline. If you watch, you know what I'm talking about. But between the pickle scene and the mom monster, it is just unreal how creepy this is. And I think they are pulling off the horror exceptionally well. And for this episode to be streaming on Halloween, again, props to you, HBO. This was very smart marketing and timing. I would like to know what everybody else thinks. Did you enjoy this episode as much as I did? What are you coming here for? Are you an existing Stephen King fan? Did you watch the last 2 films? Did you read the book? Or is this a freshie for you? And either way, however you're approaching it and whatever your level of familiarity may or may not be, this works as a standalone. I mean, this could be a standalone season of its own. Obviously, it is meant to have 3 seasons. They're going to tell the story backwards. And if they continue at this pace, I think we are in for a complete treat for this series. Please do go ahead, like this video, hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. I will be here with weekly videos. I cannot wait to talk more about this show. And I'm also covering the Telemasca right now. So if you like the darkness and creepiness of this, check out the Telemasca. Yes, it is in the Anne Rice universe and does tie into Interview with the Vampire, but I also think that can kind of work on its own as a supernatural type of spy thriller. So don't miss that, plus the other shows I'm going to be talking about, and I will be back again very soon. Media Melanie, clicking off.